Hi, my name's Rob Jolliffe, and this is a Sabre Limited Expert Series video on the disadvantages of cloud ERP. So this video is on the top reasons to avoid a cloud ERP system, and I want to just kind of dig into the reasons why companies should not look at a cloud ERP system. My name is Rob Jolliffe. I am an expert in Microsoft Dynamics Business Central and an expert in manufacturing ERP systems. So hopefully I can bring some of that expertise to you today and let you see some of the reasons why you might want or not want a cloud ERP system. There's a couple of assumptions I'm going to make in this video. So the first one is that you are a manufacturing company and you're looking at an ERP system and you're looking for what I call a mid-market ERP, which means that it's not the SAPs and Oracles of the world, and it's not something that gets plugged into QuickBooks or Simply Accounting. It's a full ERP system with an accounting module and inventory control and scheduling and all of the things that you would need, but it's either cloud or on-premise, which is the other type of ERP system. If you enjoy this video, you'd like to talk to me, you just want to chat about these concepts, the best way to do so is to book a meeting with me through my calendar. There's a link in the video description to my calendar. Just click on it. This way, you can fill in the example of the questions you might have. There's a little place where you can put notes in. It lets me set some time aside and be able to help you with those questions and answer them really quickly for you. So please don't hesitate to book a meeting with me if you like this video. Okay. Why am I doing this video? Because for some people, it would seem really counterintuitive that somebody who sells an cloud ERP system would explain why not to get one. But I get a lot of clients who come to me and they want to understand, and they have some ideas about what the advantages and disadvantages of cloud ERP are. And I just want to put those forward. I want to answer those questions kind of in advance for people and help you make a decision, because it saves both of us time if you already know that you're not going to get a cloud ERP system. So let's take a look at what the disadvantages are for cloud ERP. Okay, so one of the disadvantages would be if you have a bad internet connection. So if you are operating your business someplace, and a lot of industrial businesses have this problem, you're kind of on the edge of the city or the town, or you're in a more rural area, ex-urban area, and you just don't have good internet connections. And that could be a reason why you really are not going to be able to use a cloud ERP system. I would say that you don't need a super fast ERP. I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding. The ERP doesn't have to be, or the internet connection doesn't have to be super fast. The internet connection needs to be steady, and it has to have what's called low latency. So latency is also called ping. And if your internet has really good ping and enough bandwidth, you don't need a massive amount of bandwidth, then you can run a cloud ERP. But if you have really poor latency, or you have intermittent bad internet connections that go up and down regularly, then this would be a big problem. And I would say this is a disadvantage of having a cloud ERP, that those bad internet connections can really affect it. Now, another disadvantage to an ERP, or another area where you would avoid a cloud ERP, would be if you have a really high data collection requirement for your business. So I've run into that in a few businesses where they're collecting almost real-time data from their production equipment, and they're feeding that into the ERP, and it's really a lot of it. For instance, you might have a system where you're doing a photo-based photography, like a digital photography-based quality check system, and it feeds into your ERP, and it's creating gigabytes of data every year that gets into your ERP system. That could be a problem if you have a cloud ERP, because now you're usually in the cloud, you're paying not a premium precisely, but you're paying quite a bit for storage. And if you're storing a really unusual amount, that can really drive up the cost. And that's a reason to avoid a cloud ERP system. So this is something I've run into a few times. It's pretty rare today, but we have some clients that come to us and they key everything into their ERP. So the modern approach, I would say, is to import data through Excel sheets or from PDF files directly into the ERP system. But for some businesses, for whatever reason, that's not possible, and they key in their orders. I think this is going away, but the typical example I get when I talk to these clients is they say that those old green screen DOS-based systems where it was all keyboard shortcuts and F1 and Control X and you could do all of your functions with your keyboard with these keyboard combinations, that was faster than their Windows-based ERP. And if that's the case, then a cloud-based ERP is probably going to be even worse for you, because with Windows-based ERPs, you still get a lot of keyboard shortcuts. Once you move into the cloud, you start getting into more of a browser experience, and they're not really meant for high volume data entry like the old days. They're more intended for importing data from different sources. Now you can put data in. It's not like it's slow. It's just that if you had a group of 5 or 6 data entry clerks and they worked 8 hours a day and that's all they did was pound keyboards and push stuff in, it's not an efficient system. Now, another reason to avoid a cloud ERP system, or disadvantage kind of turned on its side, is that if you have made a big investment recently in hardware. So for some companies, they have recently upgraded their hardware data center and they have that sunk cost. Now, I was always taught as in my college years that sunk costs should not be evaluated when considering investments, but the reality is we do that. And if we've just invested $100,000 into a data center for our old ERP system and it's brand new, getting a cloud-based ERP system might seem like we're paying for the privilege of having it hosted in the cloud when we've already paid for the equipment. I will warn you that some of the cloud systems, like Microsoft system, for instance, the price of buying it and running it on your own system or the price of having it in the cloud is kind of the same, depending on how you buy it. So it may not actually be costing you that much to run it in the cloud. Okay, another one that is a reason to avoid a cloud ERP system would be the custom programming that you need to do because you've got something custom within your environment and you have to hook into the database. So I write SQL here. If for those of you who don't know, SQL is short for is an acronym, structured query language. It's also sometimes spoken as SQL. And SQL is a kind of database. And the SQL databases are able to be read and written from directly, but when you're in the cloud, you won't have one. And if you rely on that, and it's an absolute requirement that you have direct access to the SQL database, then you might not be able to move to the cloud. It's a reason to avoid a cloud system. Now, in modern ERP systems, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, there's a move towards something called a web service. Web service, also sometimes called OData, is a technology that allows you to not have to know what the backend SQL server is. You connect to the web service and the web service talks to the SQL server, and that's available in the cloud. That is the direction that even the on-premise servers are beginning to move to, because honestly, even the on-premise companies are beginning to realize they have to move to the cloud eventually. Another reason why companies avoid the cloud is because they are concerned about data. They want to make sure that their data security is maintained. They feel a little bit more comfortable having the data on premise. I think that the area where this really becomes an advantage is if you can air gap your data. So by air gapping, what I mean is that your ERP system is not connected to the internet. So there is no internet connections into that server. The server that's running the ERP system can only connect to the desktop computers that are in the company. Now, of course, the risk comes that the desktop computers are connected to the internet because your employees might be using that to get email or check websites or check pricing from vendors. When that happens, of course, you now have the possibility of somebody hacking their computers and through their computers getting into the ERP system. But the reality is that you can air gap your business. You can even disconnect your internet from all of your general users and only have certain users have it. This is very rare. It would be in areas where really high security is required, but it is possible. Whereas in a cloud system, it is basically impossible to completely secure it because it is inherently on the internet and connectable through the internet. Of course, you want to use things like two-factor authentication and those types of techniques to prevent people from accessing it who shouldn't be able to, but it does have that drawback. Another area that businesses are worried about is they have a subscription sensitivity. So what I mean by that is there is a feeling that if I buy the ERP system outright once and pay, let's say, the equivalent to 4 years of subscriptions to buy the ERP and have it and own it, if I'm going to own it for 10 or 15 years, I'm ultimately going to have a payback to that because I've now owned the ERP for that period of time. And that is a completely legitimate thing. I believe that my experience is that businesses that do that, what they often do is they buy the ERP and they put it in place and sit on it, and it stays the same for the 10 years that they own it. I believe that is something that is preferential in some cases, which I'll talk about next, but that is the difference. That's why I believe that when you get an on-premise system and you're installing it on your own hardware, it might be better not to go with the subscription model because you're using the version as of you bought it. And one of the things to remember, though, is for all ERP systems that are sold as on-prem, there is an annual renewal for that ERP to maintain it. And typically, most ERP systems today, if you don't maintain that annual renewal, you also can't add users or add modules to it. So just do keep that in mind. But that subscription sensitivity, the like of paying it month to month is a big reason to avoid. One of the last reasons, and it is actually one of the most, I would consider the most legitimate reason probably to avoid a cloud ERP system is the forced upgrades that cloud ERP systems do. Cloud ERP systems don't want to have every company who's using it on a different version. They want everybody on the same version all the time. In the case of Microsoft Business Central, that means that you have, I believe, up to 1 year that you can delay an upgrade, but you can't delay it further than that. So if you decided that you had something about your system that needed to stay the way it was and couldn't be upgraded because to upgrade it might break some customization or integration you've created or require lots of employee retraining or whatever it would happen to be, then the forced upgrades of the cloud ERP systems might be a problem. And I would say just to keep in mind that cloud ERP systems, when they do upgrades, they do relatively small incremental upgrades frequently. And when you have an on-prem system, when you do your upgrade, it'll be a really big upgrade, probably more costly, that will most likely jump several versions of your ERP at the same time. So as always, check out the links in the description for other videos and blogs and articles that are related to this video. And of course, subscribe and follow us. We have new videos weekly. Please just click the subscribe button and remember to follow our channel. Maybe click the bell icon so that you are reminded of any upcoming videos. Thank you very much for watching this, and we hope to see you soon.